Bishop f4 was already mentioned in connection with the name of first world champion Wilhelm Steinitz, who considered this, connected this move, or who played bishop f4, trying to eventually play e3, c5, b4, and pressing black on the queen side, gaining a lot of space there. Obviously now this plan cannot be realized in its entirety. Black already knows about the possible dangers of being pressed upon by white's pawn's advance on the queen side. But the move bishop f4 still looks very attractive for many players, because unlike in bishop g5 lines, it keeps more pieces aboard. Although in many lines, the positions could be exhausted to technical endgames, because with the help of modern computers, the players are able to surf around and to scratch the position next to his bottom. So a normal move is castle and then e3. And here black had two principal approaches. One, which is a traditional one and the most rational one, is to play c5, trying to use the bishop on e4. It's not on g5, so that's why black could attack pawn on d4 and put pressure on white's center, not to be afraid of losing d5 pawn, because knight on f6 is being pinned. Second approach is to play knight bd7. And this is a modern approach that black allows to play c5 and then play c6, b4, b6, and then, for instance, after bishop d3, playing a5, a3, bishop a6. As you can see, the bishop is developed, and then quietly playing queen c8, queen b7, exchanging bishops, bringing rook on c8, and then trying to play bishop d8, bishop c7. So having pressure on white's advanced pawn structure there. Black managed to equalize in the games. There's a collection of the games that will be presented in the attachment, in separate attachment, and you could see that in general black reached very satisfactory position. Again, queen c8, queen b7, exchange on d3, rook goes on c8, fc8, and then bishop d8 and bishop c7. So those are the moves that prove to be giving black a normal satisfactory game. After knight bd7, white also tried to deviate, not playing c5, but for instance playing a3, which is not a bad move. I played once in the blitz match against Kramnik, because eventually black has to play c5 now, and then we reach another position with an isolated pawn, exchanges on d5, exchange on c5, and then bishop e5. And also it's not much for white, but there's always a little pressure, and black has to suffer a bit fighting for a draw. Also for a good tough positional player, it will not be a very complicated task. So sometimes white is winning. There are a number of games that can be quoted, Zvyagintsov Ulputian, for instance, or Ponomarev Vallejo Rapid Chess, where black couldn't sustain the enduring positional pressure from white side. But knight bd7 it's sort of a modern approach from black that didn't want to start fighting long theoretical duel on the main playing field. So c5, white takes on c5, bishop takes c5, and now white has two different approaches. One is to take on d5 and to play the position with an isolated pawn, a3, preventing check on b4, knight 6, bishop d3, bishop g4 on castle. So that's knight c6, bishop d3, of course not, bishop b6, of course bishop g4 allowed queen c2 attacking pawn on h7 and bishop on c5, castle. And now black could play either bishop g4 or immediately d4. So d4, e4, bishop g4, and it seems that black got a passed pawn on d4, but in fact this pawn is blocked by the bishop on d3. So white after h3, queen f6, even tried to play hg4, queen takes a4, knight h2, knight e5, g3, eventually pushing black pieces, forcing the exchange on d3, and having this pawn blockaded and white's pawn active, white always had a chance of fighting for initiative. Or after queen f6, white could go bishop on h2, and then exchange on f3, g takes f3, and white has a slight edge, but it seems that black with creative game could always save it. For instance, playing knight a5, trying to go knight b3 and c5, attacking this strong bishop, or starting just putting rooks on c8 and d8. Black also could go bishop g4, keeping d4 as an option. And it's a long theory. It seems that white could keep slight edge, but normally black was able to resist and to maintain the equality in these long lines. So more interesting is just an old and at the same time a new line starting with a3, and after knight c6. The traditional move was queen c2, and that was one of the tabias of sixes. Queen a5, rook d1. And now bishop e7 and knight d2, and this line was extensively tested in Karpov-Korchnoi matches, in a match in 1978, where after playing e5, knight b3, queen b6, bishop g5. Here is, instead of playing d4, black could actually play bishop g4, which is the best move now, and after f3 playing simply bishop e6, and after bishop takes f6, d takes c4. So those are always little tricks. So the best move after e5 is not playing knight b3, but playing bishop g5, and then d4, knight b3, queen d8, bishop e2, and now a5. That's another main playing field in this opening. This is a position that was also extensively analyzed, and there were many games played. So far, black managed to create sufficient counterplay, and that's why white was looking for other options, and one of them was long castle. So quite an amazing deviation from traditional ideas of just putting pressure on black center. In fact, I analyzed this line quite extensively in 1987 before playing match with Karpov in Sevilla, but unfortunately I decided against using this line in the match, which could, I think now, could turn this event into my favor quite decisively, because it was a brand new approach, and I know how difficult it is to fight such new, fresh ideas when the clock is ticking, and especially when you play the World Championship match. Unfortunately, now there's too much known in this position, and we can even talk about a forced draw. Sounds ridiculous, a forced draw, which could occur if you play bishop e7 and then g4, of course. And now the main line is dc4, bishop c4, e5, g5, take on f4, take on f6, bishop f6, knight d5, knight e7, knight takes f6, g f6, rook g1, king h8. Now white tried number of moves here, but e4 proved to be the best one, and then b5, bishop d5, knight takes d5, e d5, b4. And so I want to stop now, because we can continue indefinitely. The best is 8 takes before queen a1, then they do queen a6, and in all these complications ends with a draw. One of the games is Kramnik Anand from their advanced chess match, where the game ended with a table-based ending, queen and pawn versus queen. Players agreed to fix a draw, because with two computers it was totally useless of playing. In fact, there were other options for both white and black, but the position is equal. So this moves, it's quite a nice and light sequel of the move. So just you play dc4, bishop c4, e5, g5, but each move contains so many possible deviations. There were so many games played to identify that was the best move in this position. There were a number of options that both white and black exhausted before reaching the conclusion this is the best move. So it's virtually impossible even in 10 hours story to tell you all about all the details, because now with the help of the computer database with megabase you can just go into it by studying the games, collecting them, and always looking for an improvement, because even this game, even the position was played extensively, was tested by Kasparov, Kramnik, Anand, Karpov, Gelfand, Short. You always have a possibility of finding a slight deviation that could give you an edge. It could not be an ultimate truth. It could be just an idea, but it could work in one game, and that's what you need. Just, find something for one game, maybe for one tournament, and that's how you can make your own personal contribution into the opening theory. So the line with bishop a4 offers many options, because a part of this one that I mentioned, queen c2 and castle, there's another modern move, rook c1.